Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to sorry about that. Welcome to another Lunch and Learn webinar by the Apex Inland Empire chapter. Today, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity. It's a very interesting topic presented to you by Dr. Tony Coulson. And Dr. Coulson is a professor at Cal State San Bernardino. And he'll go ahead and give a brief description of his background, and then we'll start the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kate. I'm Dr. Tony Coulson. I wear a number of different hats. One of them is I'm the director of the Cybersecurity Center at Cal State San Bernardino. I'm also the lead for the National Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity Education. That's a mouthful. It's basically the National Security Agency and the Department of Homeland Security have certified about 232 schools or designated them as centers of academic excellence, and we lead the community of those schools. I'm the lead for that. And then Cal State San Bernardino is also a national resource center for cybersecurity education. We do a lot of workforce and pipeline type of stuff as to why we need a cybersecurity education, but also, as you'll see in my presentation today, I know it's supposed to be, cybersecurity. What's that all about? I kind of renamed it a little bit to cybersecurity and what keeps me up at night, because of in my role as a cybersecurity professional. A lot of people call me and they have problems. I just had a neighbor, their mail was stolen a few months ago, and someone just took out a mortgage on their house, and they're all, Tony, what should I do? And then on the national level, we've been involved in so many projects with, say, federal agencies and others. People sometimes will stop me in casual conversation when they're not talking about, evidently there was a football game yesterday. I don't know anything about it. I talk cybersecurity. They ask me and they say, hey, Coulson, what keeps you up at night? So I thought I would share a little bit about an unforeseen crisis, or at least a silent crisis a lot of people don't know about in the area of cybersecurity. I'm really honored to be working with Apex. Years ago, Apex, probably around 1992, Apex had a journal, and I wrote an article on it at the time, which was about knowledge management and how knowledge management would be the future of how we kind of collect knowledge from multiple sources and so on. I've had a long career and had a chance to work with Apex in the past, so it's a real pleasure to be involved in this today. So without further ado, since it's lunchtime, and the good thing is that your microphones are muted, so I don't have to hear you chewing. I'm just going to go ahead with this. So here we go. Oh, I have to click over here. So a lot of people ask me, Tony, what keeps you awake at night? Well, I have a number of things that keep me awake at night. One is I have 4 kids. Yes, that keeps me awake at night. I have a lot of papers because I am a university professor. I travel a lot, but I have a lot of papers. I have to be on top of all these standards, like this one right here, NIST 7581. It's one of my favorites. The new one that I really like is they renamed something called the NICE framework. NIST renamed the NICE framework, NIST 800-181. That just rolls off the tongue. But probably one of the, another thing I'm very concerned about is a dangerous cybersecurity situation that is really raging across the planet right now. And then what keeps me awake at night is actually all of these things. If it isn't my kids, it's those papers. It's trying to keep on top of the ever-changing standards. And the cybersecurity situation is really, really dangerous, especially in light of some things I'm about to share with you that the government has been talking about. So the former head of NSA, General Keith Alexander, in 2013, the US was under a significant attack from what they feel is a certain nation state. And General Keith Alexander gave a speech at a convention called Black Hat, and he said, we have just experienced in the last year, the United States has experienced the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. In other words, what he was saying is that this particular nation state had broken into pretty much all our best stuff. They'd broken into the US Department of Commerce, which holds all our latest and greatest manufacturing capabilities. That's where top secret processes for making certain materials are held, etc. And that nation state took it all. They did. They took everything, all the latest, greatest technologies and so on, to the point where forensic technologists got involved, and they said, at one time they would try and sneak in and leave. Now they weren't even. They were just brazenly just taking things. And imagine all the research and development of this country, the manufacturing knowledge, etc. Imagine a country just being able to go in and jump decades ahead of where they were. Leon Panetta, the former Secretary of Defense, he was in the news this past week, and he said, cyber attacks are looming. It could be as destructive as the terrorist attack of 9/11, amounting to a cyber Pearl Harbor. This has been repeated through several folks, secretaries of defense and directors of the CIA, that have all sounded the alarm bell and said, look, there's no way we can protect everything that's going on in a free country. This is a big deal. Well, during the 2013 incident, a treaty came out after President Obama ordered Deputy Defense Secretary William Lynn to say this, and then the president later said it, to move a treaty forward, which is the United States reserves the right under the laws of armed conflict to respond to serious cyber attacks with a proportional and justified military response at the time and place of its choosing. The veiled thing stated there is that the United States under cyber attack reserves the right to basically use a kinetic attack. That means, real bombs, real missiles, real people dying. Not saying that cyber couldn't also have people dying, but that was serious. Well, this was just reiterated, I believe it was 3 weeks ago. The US government, the Pentagon, made an announcement to all of its defensive partners, and it was leaked in quotation marks, to the world, that the United States will use military force and include nuclear options in the case of a cyber attack. Now you might say, well, wait, come on, somebody hacking a computer versus nuclear options. Well, we know, those of us in the cyber world know that the right types of things happening in a chemical plant could be as destructive as a nuclear attack, could poison entire lakes, poison entire cities, cause massive explosions, a lot of different things, and it is all very possible. And we know that foreign entities have been very intrigued in this. If the United States, if we were able to shut off things like communications, undersea cable communication lines with Europe, or the recent that the China and Russia have basically said that they have the technology to take out all the United States low Earth orbit satellites, which are the GPS, which control things like the F-35 fighter. But hey, enough with the cheerful news. This is what people think threats are, right? Terrorism, which is huge. Terrorism is absolutely huge. The Pentagon has announced that they are realigning themselves, not necessarily to concentrate on terrorism anymore. We think of crime, someone robbing you on the street. Probably the dumbest criminal in the world today is the one that robs you for your smartphone, because it's very hard to basically steal your smartphone other than the physical object, because it probably has some type of protection on it. And the dollar amounts that they get in cash robberies, considering the use of cash has fallen so much, pretty dumb criminal. The person I fear most actually is Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy in War Games. Is across the world, not just Matthew Broderick, obviously, but across, and by the way, he was, him personally is not scary. It's his character in the old movie War Games, plays a hacker, and a lot of organized crime has appeared, and there's mercenary hackers in the dark web. Don't Google dark web. might take you somewhere you don't want to go. But mercenary hackers, people with nothing better to do, the organized crime knows to not hit the $10,000 mark. But ultimately, there's a lot of havoc that can be done in cyberspace. And to me, it is probably the one area where one individual with the right knowledge can create the most havoc, as we've seen pretty much every day and in recent cyber attacks. So here's where a lot of people are thinking about: Iran, Russia, China, Pakistan. Now, you might be saying, well, Tony, where's North Korea on that? We hear about that all the time in the news. North Korea did something interesting a few years ago with the Sony hack. The United States responded by shutting off their entire internet. Now they're using more of an organized crime model, but they're getting more advanced as are other players. Just like in modern kinetic warfare, if you can shut down the eyes and ears of someone or create distractions, that is the best way to move forward. But I worry about guys like Kevin Mitnick. I worry about this person in Russia who's discovered that a normal job doesn't pay as much as calling people and telling them they're from the IRS. I worry about social groups like Anonymous, not saying that they're evil, but sometimes they're not necessarily guided by an ideology that is supported by everyone. They're kind of rogue, if you will. And then another thing is this area we like to call bad code. There's billions of lines of code out there. And I don't think we're doing a good job as educators, particularly in the area of making sure code is good. As a matter of fact, there's such a race to get items out onto the marketplace and have the newest version of the operating systems and so on, that bad code comes out. You know this because every week you have an update on your phone, etc. I think Apple made a very gutsy announcement in their annual financial disclosure call, and they said that the next version of iOS will not concentrate on new features, but on quality. They've been trying to push the envelope to the point where they've had a number of embarrassment code failures. Now they're going to focus on going back to quality, which is something that as a company they were renowned for. There's a lot of vulnerabilities, and there's a lot of different things out there. So a lot of people in the world think that in order to be in cybersecurity, you must be one of like these Star Trek fans here. If you're wondering who these people are, this is me and some folks I work with at Cal State San Bernardino, and this is some of the normal things that we wear around the office. I am the one in the gold shirt in the middle. Dr. Nestler is in the blue shirt. He's the science officer. And then James, and now he likes to point out that he's the red shirt, but if us Star Trek fans would notice, he actually has bands around his wrists, but he doesn't show them, and that shows he's command, so he's not the red shirt that dies in every episode. But cybersecurity is a lot broader than Star Trek fans talking about who the best captain is. Cybersecurity involves audit, it involves intelligence, it involves supply chain and logistics, it involves marketing, it involves so many things nowadays. Very hard to nail down exactly what cybersecurity is, but I can just tell you it is now the domain that touches pretty much everything that we do. So here's some statistics for you just to freak you out a little bit. And I'm going to update the statistic. 230,000 open cyber jobs. There's probably 360,000 based on the latest study that just came out this week. But overall, year-over-year growth, 91%. So imagine that right now, let's say in the United States in 2018, it's predicted we're going to have about 500,000 open jobs in cyber. Higher ed is producing less than 10,000 a year. Yeah, think about that. And that's domestic talent. You see 6 out of 10 students in higher ed that are going into cybersecurity are actually international students. It's not about xenophobia. This is just a statement about what we're able to produce. Countries with huge populations have made cyber a very large priority, and they are producing more than 10,000 a month, and we are producing less than 10,000 a year to solve an issue that is just extremely widespread. The U.S. is good about providing, say, retraining, provide commercial certification, sending people out to go get a certificate or retraining existing workers. But what we're training people in is the same things that are available to our adversaries. The organized crime elements can go take the same classes that somebody that's training in cybersecurity can take. They can see this is something that is very big. It's been noticed since 1994, when jokingly Al Gore invented the internet. Right? That's when people say that. I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, since 1994, and there's been a lot of efforts to try and move the dial, but how successful have they really been? The other thing about having a democracy like we do, and we're not a country that says, hey, guess what, you're now in our military and you're conscripted and you'll be in our cyber, is that we have no situational awareness of cyber talent. We don't know what's being produced. If you said to me tomorrow, Tony, in my manufacturing company, we have all of these electronically controlled pumps, we have Siemens control equipment, we have all of these things. How many people do we have that we can call those devices, by the way, SCADA? How many people are we producing in this year, and where do I find all these people that know SCADA? Nobody knows the answers to that. Nobody knows. This year, an organization called CyberWatch West, which focuses on the 14 Western United States, and the CAE community of schools, ran an open job fair from all 232 centers of academic excellence schools. We had 32 employers and 1,400 students sign up, and it was free to everybody. And we wanted to use that as an opportunity to see what kind of skills we had out there. Hugely popular, and we're running it again this October 6th.
Dr. Coulson.
So that'll be good. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but your slides are not moving forward.
They're not moving.
No. No, we are.
Is that for everyone?
Yes, I am seeing from others.
Let me see. Hold on. Let me see. How about that? Which slide are you on?
Right now, I'm still seeing the and what keeps me up at night, the main one. There may be a delay. Yes.
Interesting, because I am like 20 slides in. Okay, hold on. Let me just let me stop showing my screen for a second. And now I'm going to show my screen again. Okay, what's on your screen right now?
I'm still showing the cybersecurity and what keeps me up at night.
Okay, let's see what. How about?
Can you go to slideshow? Oh, you almost had it then.
Well, something just changed.
It just flipped, went back.
All right, let me do this. Okay, we tested this before, and as you know, these things are all perfect. I will, I'm going to change right here for just a second. And give me just one moment, please. That's this one. And here we go. All right, what are you seeing right now?
Now we got it. Cybersecurity crisis.
There we go. So just to go back, because you guys missed some really fantastic stuff. There's that Star Trek picture I was telling you about. Yep, that's scary, huh? Let's see. There's the picture of Matthew Broderick. There we are, in case you didn't get that. There's Kevin Mitnick, the Russian hackers, anonymous. You're all seeing that, I assume. And here's a bunch of statistics. Are you all seeing that?
Yes, we are back.
Oh, all right. Well, that's good. All I had to do was do what they say in IT. Turn it off and turn it on again, right? Everything works better that way. So where I was that we don't really know where this cyber talent is, and so I was talking about the job fair that we had. We're going to repeat that again October 6th. If anybody's interested, send me an email or go through Apex, and I'll be glad to. If you have a hiring problem, let me know. We can set you up with a booth. What's amazing is that when we get down to commercial training, it's extraordinarily expensive because supply and demand, that whole economic model. Imagine if you have, you need to retrain your workforce and you have a huge company, 10,000 people or so. It's $3.5 million for a week of training. And in government, they have a huge crisis with cyber talent because they can't compete with wages. It's that simple. People get all the training and then they leave. I know that certain federal agencies have exclaimed that they are losing people by the hundreds now to commercial companies. And that's usually very cyclical. When the economy goes down, they're going to try and return to government and so on. But this is a crisis because the government has really made an effort, a strong effort, to try and get as many people into cyber and protect us as possible, but also expanded the ranks of cyber hiring. So who is demanding the most cybersecurity professionals? Right now, professional services, finance, and manufacturing. That's amazing. Manufacturing, again, it's the SCADA control systems that we're talking about. They have the highest demand. So this data comes from a Burning Glass report. Burning Glass is a recruiting firm, but they also gather a lot of data. Just in the last few years, we've seen that finance has grown by 137%. So we want to protect the money. Healthcare is huge, and retail trade. But I think this bottom bullet really explains the crisis in a lot of ways. And it's this way. The hardest to fill jobs call for financial skills or manufacturing skills. I'm going to just say skills in general, along with IT, because people don't typically train workers to be hybrids. So back in 2009, Cal State San Bernardino, I'll do a little plug, but I'll tell you this is part of a national trend. We're one of the first business programs. Cal Poly Pomona was another one, Cal State San Bernardino, and Idaho State University had business programs that received the Centers of Academic Excellence designation. And I can tell you there was a big kerfluffle about the whole thing. The problem was that people said, you're not real computer scientists and cybersecurity experts. Well, that's true. We're not computer science, but we are as business. So we integrate a business skill, manufacturing, supply chain, finance, healthcare management, accounting, and then law, and then we add it with technology skills. And now this has become the main trend is everybody wants these folks. We still need hard scientists. Absolutely, I'm not making that argument. But we need both. This field has gotten so big that we need to take workers and have them in hybrid to try and increase the pipeline. What's amazing about that also is that we're starting to see the movement of students into dual majors, but also students starting to leave their former majors, where we're starting to see decreases in some traditionally large majors as students head to cyber. I think in general, what are students and what are people looking for when it comes to jobs is this, right? If you're aspiring to be in cybersecurity, you're in low supply and high demand. basic economics. And so we see a lot of people even moving careers, trying to head into this space. This is important. Now, I know that I'm getting now into, students and employees and workforce and so on, but why is that important? Because there's a tremendous shortage on our hands. We are not producing enough to face our adversaries. As a matter of fact, there's a war based on economies of scale, where somebody can hire mercenaries in India who will set up a botnet and launch 100,000 computer attack against somebody for pennies on the dollar, but it will cost that company millions upon millions to defend against it. And so this has given rise to extortion schemes, ransomware attacks, where companies would just say, you know what, it isn't worth fighting the battle. Here, I'll just give you $50,000. Please go away. Leave me alone. So how do we fight this? Well, some people have suggested we use artificial intelligence, okay, but where are the devices made? Who's programming them, and how reliable are they? But we need human, right? Human capital. We need as many people. And again, the cost of these people is going up. Recently, I had a student, undergraduate student, she first year out, as a matter of fact, that summer, it was July, her job offer was more than I make. And I was upset with her. I won't ever talk to her again. Just kidding, of course. But I did infer that she should perhaps help me with my retirement aspirations. But yeah, this is serious. This is serious money for a serious problem. So on one side, this is happiness for the cyber people, but on the other side, this is a major crisis. That number is, as a member of the Department of Homeland Security, a branch chief said publicly, this is the most absurd number he's ever seen. Because if in this country we said there's 360,000 unfilled police positions, or healthcare, or firefighters, there'd be people standing up and screaming, we have to do something. We would have to do something because it's a public safety issue. Well, I am here to tell you that your government, and based on the executive order that the president released a few months back, and what Congress has been trying to do, Senator Kaine has been leading an effort, Senator Langevin, Congressman Pete Aguilar, and other representatives have been trying to lead an effort to say, we need to pay attention to this because this is public safety. If you look at the number of ransomware attacks that happened, you look at how healthcare services were shut down in Great Britain over a cyber attack. We know that our adversaries could shut down our electricity grid, and to the point of causing widespread destruction of that grid. Bear in mind, folks, the electrical grid, much of the generating equipment is built in the 50s, and those companies don't exist. You can't just call up Westinghouse tomorrow and say, I need to replace a generator that blew up that was built in 1950. Do you happen to have one on the shelf? You see what happened in Puerto Rico from a hurricane. Imagine wanton destruction of a man-made possibility. And that's realistic. That extreme, I cannot understate how realistic it is. Now, obviously, our electrical and our providers are doing their best to thwart these types of attacks. And this is no judgment on them, but they're facing the same challenge that we are. Huge amounts of deficits in educated professionals, deficits in workforce, but also the inability to hire. And it doesn't help, Tony Coulson opinion alert here, it doesn't help that the government can't seem to, for going on 8 years now, not been able to provide stable funding for itself. It's hard to think strategically when you're constantly doing, threats of government shutdown every little while. That's Tony Coulson opinion. But it's been going on for years. I think it's actually the new norm for the past decade. And it's not a dig at any particular administration. It's just a point is if cybersecurity is so big, we have this absurd number, we have these federal programs that have been created, what is it that we can do to help solve this problem? And so there's been a number of things that have been created to try and move us forward and to solve these problems. Cal State San Bernardino leads the CAE community of schools. We also run an infrastructure project called the Nice Challenge Project. We also have Gen Cyber, which is a camp that reaches into K through 12. So we have the NSA DHS Centers of Academic Excellence, 230 schools now. It has not been funded. There's no line item in Congress because in the last 10 years, we've been on something really called a continuing resolution, which means you can only fund something that was funded years before. And for 10 years, or actually technically 8, because in 2 years, they did have a 2-year budget in the middle, sort of. Budget compromise. It's been hard to create a new program and fund it, but wow, it's there. The mechanism's there. The government created it, but there's been we need some oomph behind it. To reach into K through 12, the NSA and others have created U.S. Cyber Challenge, Cyber Patriot, Gen Cyber camps to reach into K through 12 to start getting kids into STEM programs. Provided some grant monies for STEM in local areas, but also specifically on cybersecurity talent to try and increase the pipeline. We run a camp every year. We take Girl Scouts, 250 Girl Scouts every year, and we bring them to Cal State San Bernardino. We have them work with Facebook and Google and the Department of Homeland Security and IBM and Bank of America. They all send out teams to work with these kids and stimulate them and say, hey, look, when you head to high school, start taking some science classes, and you too can go and become a cybersecurity professional and enter into this job field. We have the NICE framework, which is the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. It is a framework that describes the workforce and what competencies are required for cybersecurity jobs. This framework is extremely important. It is now a national standard, NIST 800-181. Feel free to look it up because it'll start us on the path of visibility of competency. But also what we're looking at is a way to assess competency. Something that maybe our adversaries don't have is as students are graduating, maybe there's a way that they could, through something like the NICE Challenge Project or other projects similar to it, show off some of their skills and say, okay, here's the jobs of what we are saying these students are qualified for, so that we can move investments towards areas where the United States has deficits. Then we have the Scholarship for Service program, which is a program that was started in 2001. It's a fantastic program, provides huge scholarships to students that are willing to not only study cybersecurity, but are willing to work for the federal government for 2 years upon graduation. Yes, that is true. They have to work in the federal government for 2 years beyond graduation. Actually, they just moved it to state and local government. But that is an amazing program that pays, like at our school, where tuition for an undergraduate's around $6,500 a year. I think it'll be $7,000 next year. We pay students about $80,000 to go to school to study cyber. We give out 10 of those a year. We currently have 370 students in cybersecurity, but this is about the idea of trying to get students to go into federal careers because much like military recruitment, there's a lot of money being offered elsewhere, but we need people to protect the general society. We've also seen a huge investment by the National Science Foundation in what are called advanced technology education centers into the community colleges and partnering community colleges with high schools, veterans groups, and four-year universities to create a pathway to speed up the development of our workforce as much as possible. And then we have new workforce needs. One area that the U.S. has been struggling with for a long time is in the area of intelligence, is that we would like to get in front of cyber attacks, be proactive about them rather than reactive all the time. Because reaction is a lagging indicator, means the attack has already occurred, we've seen it, and now we go, ooh, man, I wish I would have been able to stop that. What we'd like to do is if somebody launches a cyber missile on one side of the world, that we'd like to see it, stop it before it causes any harm or damage. This, current NSA director, Mike Rogers, has said, you know what, this is a huge deal, and so much so that they're doing a complete reorganization of the NSA, breaking part of it into U.S. Cyber Command, and an entity within the NSA solely focused on cyber defense and cyber operations. So we have a lot of things going on. We have competency, visibility, pipeline. We have a lot of different things that are happening in this space. And what I would tell you is that when you ask me a question, what's this all about? Or, what keeps you up at night? You can see that there's a lot of vectors that I'm worried about. But particularly our area is being worried about workforce. Without the people, without the human capital, this is going to be dangerous. And it's really, if we put it in perspective, how does it affect our APICS members out there, for an example? First of all, cyber is all in your business. It's all up in your business. It really is. We can't say that the military can defend us, and we can't say that the local police department can defend us at this point. What we can say is we can defend ourselves the best way possible. Look at risk assessments and things like that. But it's also about economics. Think about it this way. 90% of the money in the United States is transacted electronically. Imagine if somebody shut off your money supply for 3 days. Imagine if somebody was able to interrupt shipping, that they stalled what was happening at the ports for 3 days. Imagine electricity being off. We saw what the devastation in Puerto Rico and in Houston. The economic costs are huge, but it could be widespread. It could target a particular sector of the economy. Imagine not being able to get a key component that you need for months at a time. It's as good as sanctions. It's as good as embargoes. When we talk about economic sanctions in the world's marketplace, we hear about it all the time in the news. We're going to declare these sanctions and those sanctions against certain countries. Well, one particular country did not like sanctions being applied to them, and they decided to take it out on 2 other countries that were allied with the United States, essentially shutting down their banking operations for days, where people could not get cash out of machines, but they didn't use cash. They all used cards. Imagine not being able to use your debit card or your credit card for a period of time because the financial networks are shut down while everybody figures things out. Imagine somebody manipulating the stock market as what's happening with cryptocurrencies these days. There is a lot of vectors out there, and there's not enough people to protect us. So I guess part of what I'm saying here, as in my role as the lead of the CAE community, is we really need to invest and support workforce redevelopment in this area. It is in everybody's best interest to do that. Everybody's best interest. I don't get an extra commission for graduating extra students. It doesn't work that way. All I know is I'll sleep better at night when I see some of my students walking across the graduation stage, and I know that they're going into a job that's going to help protect me and my family. I have students that have graduated many of them work in Washington, D.C. now. I have ones that have worked on protecting the nuclear arsenal, ones that have worked on protecting mining sites. energy sector, lots of different places, even dams. And why? Because it's needed. This is what we need. So that is pretty much summarizes a little bit about what well, not summarize it a little bit. This is what I wanted to talk about. And I'm sorry that the slides didn't advance earlier. I wish I would have known right away. We could have restarted then. But I hope that you've enjoyed the talk. And if you want, let's see, I can open up, let's see. I guess I'll ask Kate or Maggie, who are on the line, whether or not we can open up for questions, or if this is just one way only here.
There is a on your panel on the right-hand side, attendees, there is an area for questions, which many of you have used to tell me about the slides not moving forward. If you'd like to submit your questions, I can read them out to Dr. Coulson and have him answer them. We'll give you a minute to pop in some questions for him.
In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and put the slides back on. Let's see. And in case anybody missed any of the earlier slides.
We do have a question.
Okay, shoot.
How does blockchain affect cybersecurity?
Oh, that is extremely topical, extremely topical. Okay, so we have blockchain. I'll put it in simple terms for everybody if you don't know what it is. Blockchain is a distributed ledger system. So we know that accountants in the world, when you say ledger, they get all excited. Debits on the left, credits on the right. And so in the case of blockchain, we've created a ledger system that has a encryption algorithm, we call it hashing, that validates every transaction in a chain of transactions, all the way back to the beginning, meaning the first transaction means that it has an effect on the second transaction, which has an effect on the third transaction. And at the same time, you have a lot of folks that all contribute to validating the transactions and have the ability to visualize the transactions. So originally, blockchain was conceived as part of cryptocurrencies, the perfect exchange market, if you will, because there's no intermediaries, there's nobody sitting there saying, I will validate this transaction, and then in the time it takes to validate, somebody could remove the money, etc. In the case of blockchain, it's a pretty secure method in theory. Separating blockchain, the technology, from cryptocurrency is because currency has a lot of other ancillary things, like the way in which people interface with it that tends to get hacked. But blockchain itself as a technology for secure ledger is pretty darn good and will help improve certain sectors. So shipping is one. Maersk and IBM have joined together with IBM's blockchain cloud to create a private blockchain, meaning it's not out in the internet world, but it'd be private, that would validate all shipping. Maersk, the world's biggest shipper, would validate shipping globally. And so you would know what's on a ship, and if anybody tried to tamper with the manifest, you would see it immediately. And everybody would validate the agreements on what is on the ship, how much is going to be charged, what the bonds or insurance would be. All of those things would all be validated in something that in a private chain would likely be pretty irrefutable. It adds validity to a network of processes, in that case for Maersk and IBM, that is littered with paper processes and a myriad of electronic systems and so on. This could really help. the thing that the vulnerability in blockchain is the encryption keys that people use, but that's a longer discussion. But in the case of private blockchain, I think it's a pretty secure, and I am having my students for the first time ever this quarter are doing blockchain. They're doing hands-on because it is the most popular thing companies are looking for now. Other questions?
Yes, we have another one. I teach students CompTIA, C-O-M-P-T-I-A, for
Yes.
students, and was told Department of Defense triad of A+ network plus security plus gets a student to be entry-level employable for a government job. This was told to me at a job fair by an Army recruiter. Are you aware, or is this true? Would these certifications be employable at an entry level for a student who acquired these at the high school level, who happened to be participating in the Cyber Patriot program like that run at CSUN?
Okay, so the answer to that is there used to be a standard called DoD 8570. And 8570 said the following commercial certifications are valid for employment within federal sector. And that has been suspended and replaced. So the question would be, all right, how do you qualify as a cybersecurity professional? You can still qualify with those certifications, and I strongly encourage students to get certifications. However, degree-based is still kind of the preferred method. But the Department of Defense no longer recognizes 8570, but they have not given a 100% replacement. The last piece of the executive order that the president issued was a series of reports that will set the posture of what they're going to accept. And the president has bigger fish to fry right now than release what his final judgment will be. But the direction is likely to try and come up with some type of certification around that NIST 800-181. Talk about algorithms, right? I mean, holy cow. And I am even surprising myself that I can even speak to this. But for the good of your students, Cyber Patriot, all those certifications, none of that will hurt them in the job market. It's just whether or not federal government will be giving advances in wages and things like that based on those certifications. All I know is 8570 was declared dead, and we'll see. Sometimes they declare things dead and don't have a replacement in place. Any other questions?
No, that looks like it for the moment. Oh, here comes another one.
All right, excellent.
So what should the high school cybersec instructors teach then?
Well, that is the world's biggest question right there. Let's see. I think you're teaching all of the right things. If you're going to try and pipeline into my program, for instance, or some of the other universities, I think you're heading into the right thing. You could take a look, since if you're in California, you can take a look at the UCCI, which is the UC A through G standards, and you'll see that there are 2 classes that are general knowledge classes in cyber in category A and B, which are not elective categories that you could adopt at your schools. That's broaden you out with a legal perspective in government and law, and the other one in physics. And then if you're talking about students that are earning certificates, those are always good. But if we could try and get something a little more institutionalized, where we're not taking away from students being able to just plain qualify to go to college or university, but also include those cyber skills, that's the direction I would like to see. But what should students concentrate on? I think if you have extracurriculars such as competitions, those are phenomenal, but don't forget, not all students want to play a quote sport. So I would suggest that You might look at what they're doing over in Colton, Redlands, Yucaipa, ROP. They have an excellent cybersecurity 1 and 2 series of courses that they've implemented there. That's just one piece that I know, and if you want, you can email me. I can put you in touch with them. Other questions?
That looks like it, Dr. Coulson.
Excellent. All right. Well, I would say that I hope you all avoid the flu. Don't overwhelm our healthcare system. It was a pleasure being on here, and if you have any further questions, please notify your hosts, and we'll see if we can get those questions answered.
Thank you, Dr. Coulson.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. This concludes our Lunch and Learn webinar for February. And like Dr. Coulson said, if you have any questions, you can contact myself, Kate Loing-Barron, or Maggie Watson. Thank you.